Growthpoint was listed in 1987. It's had a phenomenal share growth of just under 3,000%. It's been the first property company to be included in the top 40 index. We've asked, the presentation is going to be duly presented by two of the delegates, I believe. Mr. Werner van Antwerpen, who's the head of sustainability and utilities, as well as Natalie van der Bijl, who is the integrated reporting and sustainability manager. So I'd like to call up Werner. You're going to do the first one. Great, thank you.
So first of all, I just want to thank the JSE for setting up this event today. And, it's always nice to have the last slot, in a day, especially after lunch. Then everybody is wide awake and, everybody can listen. So, but what I can confess, our presentation has a lot of pictures. There's not a lot of text, so at least you don't have to read. Okay. So first of all, I just want to go through a little bit about Growthpoint, what Growthpoint is, just to explain you actually the business model of Growthpoint. So there's 6 key focus areas. The one is, we invest. We do strategic investments in specific property through acquisitions and developments. So, we acquire new property portfolios as well as we developed our own property portfolios. Now, from those properties, we then earn a rental. So that's where predominantly our main revenue stream comes from. And we also tap into the various options available to actually reduce our weighted cost of capital. Then we also, what differentiates us as Growthpoint is that we also manage our own property. So we don't outsource our property. So all the management of our properties is done in-house. And, we also then own these properties for the long run. It's not just for the interim, but we also own it for the long run. And then we also distribute our earnings. As a REIT, there's a certain percentage of our earnings that we need to distribute every single year. So that is just in a nutshell what our business model entails. So if you look at just the introduction of Growthpoint, so Growthpoint currently is the 29th largest company on the JSE, has over 700 staff, the largest REIT within South Africa. We have 50% of the iconic waterfront. So, any international tourist will know something about the waterfront in Cape Town. We are 65% ownership of the properties in Australia, our property company Growthpoint Australia. 5 years inclusion of the JSE SRI index, 4th year participation of the CDP carbon disclosure. So that's something that we're very proud of as well. 2nd year of the Dow Jones, and the 1st year on the GRESB. So and if you know about the GRESB, Growthpoint is one, not the only one, but one of the property portfolio companies that participated in that GRESB rating as well. So if you look at our split, we have a good split between the different sectors: retail, office, industrial, within also Australia, and then also the V&A waterfront. So our asset value currently is sitting at around about 100 billion with 525 properties. So just some key highlights. I'm going to highlight a few. Probably you have heard that our year-end results was disclosed yesterday. We had a 7.5% growth on our distribution. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers. It was yesterday disclosed. So if you have any question on that, please feel free to chat to me afterwards. Some key highlights we included, like I said, in the JSE Top 40 Index, consistent record of growth and creating value for our investors. Also a proven management track record, and that's very important. We pride ourselves on the way that we manage our properties, and I'm going to dive a little bit into the detail how we actually increase the efficiencies in our properties a little bit later on. Then also the sustainable quality of our earnings that can be projected with a high degree of accuracy. That is also very important, that you have a stable investment that you invest into. We are top 10 constituent of the FTSE and also in emerging market index. We're underpinned by high quality physical property assets diversified over the sectors, as I explained to you just on the previous slide, and a consistent record of growth of creating value for our investors with a 7.5 compounded annual growth rate in distributions over the past 5 years. So just where we were 5 years back and where we are now, currently you can see that our asset values increased to around about 100 billion. From 36 billion previously. Our distributions grew from 121 cents to 173. And also, if we go down a little bit, our properties also increased, from around about 431 to 525, with our staff also increasing to around about 700. Interesting to notice that also the ratio between staff and properties also decreased. It's just how efficient we manage the properties with our current headcount. Now, on the environmental side, there's four key focus areas. We are a founding member of the Green Building Council of South Africa. The Green Building Council started in 2008 in South Africa, and we were part of that journey right from the start. We're also members of SAPOA. And we also participate on various disclosures like previously mentioned, and also a member of the NBI. Now, just to reiterate, also our senior management is on the board of the Green Building Council of South Africa, and one of our senior management was recently elected to be on the World Green Building Council board. So we're not only representing South Africa and the strategies that we're deriving here, but we also have a global impact on how properties, especially listed property funds, should manage their properties to get the best efficiencies out of their properties. So, that said, that's most of the tech side. So if you look at our strategy, the question that people ask me is, why do we actually look at efficient properties, and why do we actually invest capital to make our properties more efficient? Now, recently, there was a green property indicator from the IPD that was released a while back, and that showed that a more efficient property gave you around about a 2.7% more growth, overall growth, and that's capital growth as also rental returns than the other batch of properties. So that's very important. So that just shows you that more efficient properties, and that is now water, energy, and waste efficient properties, can actually give you a higher return financially as well. Now, given that our strategy for sustainability, especially the environmental side, hinges on 5 key focus areas. Now, the one is utility management. Now, utility management is actually, you want to make sure that you accurately bill your client. Now, that is also very important. Before you do any intervention, you need to make sure that you actually monitor what you want to actually achieve. Before, you must set a baseline, and then you actually implement certain initiatives. So a lot of time and effort has gone in the utility management side to make sure that we're at a stage where we can now implement interventions and accurately monitor the benefits of those interventions. The second strategic lever is actually consumption efficiency, and that focuses on water, waste, as well as electricity. Now, you want to reduce water, waste, and electricity in your building because you want to reduce the operational cost in your building so that you can reduce vacancies. And I'm going to show you a slide just after this one, how electricity cost per square meter actually increased over the last 7 or 8 years. Now, one of the interventions that we have in place is our GreenX 5.0 campaign, and I'm going to chat to that a little bit later on in the presentation. The next focus area is renewable energy. And renewable energy, it is focusing on solar, it's focusing on waste-to-energy plants, it's focusing on the whole spectrum. Now, the thing is, what we have seen is with the electricity price increasing as it is, renewable energy becomes a separate business case all on its own. So you can almost get a very high return on putting up a solar plant at the right location if the roofs are strong enough. And I must emphasize if the roofs are strong enough, because it's more difficult to put up a solar plant on a property than putting a big solar plant up in Upington somewhere, because there's much more analysis that needs to go on to before you're actually putting up a renewable energy on a building. The fourth strategic focus area is sustainable development. So we made a commitment that any new building that we develop is a minimum of a 4-star green rated building, and then we work with a client that we're actually developing the property for, and we actually then see if they have the appetite to increase it to a 5 and a 6-star green building. So I will also elaborate on that a little bit later on what is a green building actually. And then the last focus area is actually the strategic projects. So that is risk mitigation projects, as well as educational type of projects where you actually advocate the sustainability in the industry. And we have a very nice campaign called the Greenovate Awards. So this is just a slide highlighting how the electricity price has increased from 2007. And this was data supplied by a company called Remote Metering Systems. And, this shows you, this is just the electricity cost per square meter for a large commercial tenant in Johannesburg. Now, very interesting to note is that, we're sitting at over 31 Rand per square meter. Now, to put that in context, if you, lease a property at around about 100 Rand per square meter, that's almost more than a third of your overall net cost you must add on top of that as an operational expense. So it becomes an extreme burden on the tenant if he doesn't even know if this building is efficient or not before he actually is leasing that specific property. So that's where we are at a stage where we actually done a lot of work on our properties, and we're going to start, in the next foreseeable future, start to disclose some of our energy consumption figures so that the tenants can actually understand, okay, listen, if you go to this property and we actually charging you 120 Rand per square meter and the other client or the other landlord is charging you 110 Rand per square meter, we actually cheaper if you look at the total gross. So that is very interesting that you need to actually understand and why we're driving this process. So one of the key things that's differentiating Growthpoint is that we actively benchmark our buildings. One of the biggest problems in commercial property is that there's different type of buildings with different users, and now you need to actually find a way that, is this building actually underperforming? Is the equipment underperforming, or is it actually just the way the building is used? Now, in Australia, there's a rating called the neighbours rating. Now, that is not to certify your neighbour. It's actually a national energy certification process. And that was made legislative, that you need to disclose your energy and water performance before you actually sell off a building and before you enter a building. So those consultants that was used to develop that specific certification in 2003 was also used to develop this energy and water performance benchmark from the Green Building Council. This was also co-sponsored by Eskom as well as Growthpoint. Now, in essence, what this benchmark entails is it looks at your size of a building. It looks at a 12-month consumption period of a specific building. It looks at the vacancy, so if a building is more vacant than the other one, that is also taken into consideration. Looks at the occupational hours, how long this building is used during a specific week, the number of people in a building, the number of computers, as well as where the building is situated in South Africa, the climate zones. And then it takes all that specific data and it boils down to a rating between 0 and 10, where 5 is the benchmark. And anything below 5 is poor, and anything above 5 is better than the benchmark. So it makes a certain benchmarking in the property industry very simple, but it takes complex consumption data to come up with this specific value. Now, in essence, this is a live data where we were in December 2013. So what you will see on your y-axis, that's the energy rating from 0 to 10, where 5 is the benchmark. And, on your x-axis, you will see the size of the specific property. So you will see that there's a few properties below the line. And that is just the different colored dots. Each dot represents a property or an office park. And what you will also see is that each color of the dot represents properties in different regions. Now, this is where we were in December 2013. And this is where we are now. So you will see that there was a lot of interventions done in the properties to actually get them at the specific benchmark. So what this Green X 5.0 campaign actually entails, the strategic objectives is actually in the name. We want to drive efficiencies, and that's where green stands for. X is the variable of the building in all our buildings to be at least on par, where 5 is the par line. So in essence, I personally think this is what differentiating us, because we're benchmarking all our properties on a continuous basis to come up with figures like this so that we can see where the problematic properties is that we need to address. And the other thing that I also need to highlight in this graph is that if you put an intervention in place, the full benefit of that intervention you will only see in 12 months' time, because it's taking a 12-month view on the property. And the reason you take a 12-month view is what you want to take into consideration all the 4 seasons in a specific consumption period. So the top line, we actually then put that in a separate campaign, the EWP campaign, where you now certify a building with an energy and water performance. So you can disclose your performance on that building. So you will see that, our average rating increased from 6 to 6.5. Now, the problem that we have being a REIT is that our CEO, Norbert and Estienne, they go on shopping sprees and then they buy additional properties. Now, we actually last year acquired a property called Taiwan Equity. So what you will see is that, the Taiwan Equity properties are sitting as the purple properties, and they are 3 properties that's below the line. So in essence, if you don't do this benchmark, you won't know if this property is actually performing or not. Now, those properties are also now in this GreenX campaign, where we partnered with a National Business Initiative, where we went on a massive drive to identify certain interventions that we can put in place to increase the performance of these properties. But what you can see is that our bulk of our properties are very well, and they are actually performing very good. So just on the solar side, we have currently 3 major solar plants installed on our properties. We currently approved another 2, one at Northgate Mall. That will be our biggest solar plant, as well as Airport Industria. And also, we have did a big analysis where we identified over 70 properties that is suitable for solar, and 12 is currently actively busy investigating and designing plans on those specific properties. So we foresee in the next foreseeable future that we will at least roll out a number of these solar plants going forward. So now the question worth asking is, what is actually a green building? We talked about the certification process, etc. But what is a green building really all about? So how does the Green Building Council's tool work? Now, in essence, the Green Building Council's tool is a thick manual. If you're building a new building, it's around about 400 pages, and it takes you around about anything between 8 months and a year to get it certified. There's 9 different categories that you go through. So it's not just electricity and water. So you go through, how the building is managed, the indoor environmental quality, what the materials is used, what is the water consumption, what is the electricity consumption, how close this building is situated to public transport, then also the land use and ecology. So it takes, and also the last one is also innovation, how much innovation is in this building. So it takes a whole suite of things, and then it actually comes up with a specific rating, where you can rate a building, new buildings, you can rate a building to a 4, a 5, or a 6-star green rated building, and existing buildings you can go to a 3 or a 2 or a 1-star actually. So in essence, what this all entails is, if you have a 4-star or a 5-star green rated property, there's a quality stamp of approval on that specific property. So the Green Building Council launched this tool in 2008. It took, in 2014 April, 50 buildings were certified in South Africa. From April 2014 to April 2015, that certification number grew to 100 buildings. So they're projecting that South Africa is growing faster in the certification space than Australia did. So, and we're actually tracking ourselves on the Australian market because the certification tool is very similar and the climates are very similar. So in essence, this is just, currently we have 23 rated properties in our portfolio, and that is also inclusive of some properties that we own 50%. Like I said, the Green Building Council started certifying existing buildings. They launched the tool in December 2013. And, we actually contributed to the pilot, and we certified 10 of our existing buildings also with this pilot tool. And, inclusive of the existing buildings and the new developments, we're sitting at around about 23 buildings that we currently has been certified in our property portfolio. Now, just to give you a view of where the other companies are tracking with this, and we're really proud ourselves because, we want to actually push the boundaries, not to actually be there as Growthpoint all alone, but actually to pull the rest of the property industry with. And you will see that Growthpoint currently sits at 23 rated buildings, and Redefine also picked up, they're sitting at 10 certified buildings. It's not that their properties are not of quality, but it's just that, they're also starting the journey of certifying properties that they can also disclose to the public. So that is just as data that was supplied by us by the Green Building Council. Then also one of the things that we proud ourselves is we have Kirstenhof building, which achieved a very prestigious 5-star rating, which was also the 100th Green Star rated building in South Africa, awarded in April this year. So another thing that we also really proud ourselves on is the strategic project side. So what we have done is we actually partnered with 3 universities, the University of Pretoria, University of Cape Town, as well as WITS. And we actually launched a student competition targeted towards quantity surveyors, property studies, and also construction students. Now, the objective of this whole program was that we saw that there's a disconnect between what's happening really in industry, in the environmental sustainability space, in property, and what is taught in some of the lectures in class at the universities. And what we wanted to do is we want to just bridge that link to show the students that, listen, this is what really is happening in the industry, and it's exciting, and you can also take part in it. So this is targeted to your 4th year honors students. So if they have a thesis topic and if there's any environmental sustainability aspect incorporated in that topic, they can enter this competition. Now, the uptake in this competition is remarkable. So this was the pilot study. Now, if you look at the number of students in a class in a specific university, we already have 51 students that actually entered this competition. There's 19 different projects already submitted. Now, how this competition works is that there's an internal competition at each one of these universities, and then the top 2 will compete against one another on the gala dinner on the 26th of November. And the prize money is 30,000. And when we launched this competition, the students was very excited. I just remember, being an honest student, having 30,000, you can buy a lot of beer. And that was just the comments that came out. So, so the guys are quite excited, and the uptake is really remarkable. So, and this is just the pilot study of this specific competition. So without further ado, I'm just going to ask Natalie to take us through the few other slides. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Werner. As mentioned, we've listed quite early on in 87 and were managed by Investec, and as a result, many of our governance considerations were dealt with by them. Since 2007, however, we've managed all our governance issues ourselves, and a very strong focus has been put on placing the correct policies for the organizations to ensure that we adhere to the minimum requirements for us to operate as a good business. Our leadership have been very instrumental in driving a lot of the property considerations, and previously were part of the Property Loan Stock Association and have been instrumental in setting up the SA REITs system that currently exists. I know that our MD is still currently involved in National Treasury to talking about the tax legislation which impacts SA REITs. Okay. From a social perspective, we've spent quite a bit of money in the last year, about 50 million for our company. And we started off looking at entrepreneurship, and Growthpoint is our pilot project. And that looks at small, medium enterprises and helping those businesses adjust to delivering services that are applicable for the property industry. To date, we have provided over 1,000 jobs from this project. Post that, we have then looked at what are the issues that we are going to focus on in our social initiatives, and decided that entrepreneurship and education are the 2 primary focus areas. And from an educational perspective, we've worked very closely with our retail centers on a project called Growthpoint, which looks at basic education, and that has been quite successful. We're also working alongside organizations such as SAPOA to provide bursary programs for students who are looking to provide skills or develop skills in the property sector. We also look at a number of infrastructure projects, but those are reviewed as they come across our table. And Werner's team has been working very closely with an organization, a feeding scheme, to help them on a solar project to help alleviate the pressures from an energy perspective. From a rental subsidy perspective, we provide space, subsidies for space for NGOs so that they can focus on their primary considerations and providing additional services to society. Our staff engagement projects are issues that we're very proud of. We started a while ago with the helping and loving others, our Halo project, and that is projects brought to the table by staff and managed by staff in order to address social issues that they encounter in their societies. Our latest initiative, G Squared, which stands for Growthpoint Gives, has been inspired by Mandela Day and the 67 minutes. But Growthpoint's objective is to get to 6,700 hours in the next year. And we've worked very closely with our HR department to ensure that all staff have at least 8 hours available to them to work with our social investment team in order to provide some type of voluntary service to the communities. From a people perspective, our policies have been in place and we're quite proud of what we've developed. That said, they are constantly under review and under development. I know there's a process underway as we speak. We're looking at employee training and development as key in order to make sure that as a sector we have the correct skills and services that help meet the needs of our clients. Employee wellness is a key consideration as well, as we believe that our employees are very important to our service delivery, and a number of platforms are developed and are provided to our employees in order to support them. From a transformation perspective, we are rated level 3 on a BEE. We have found that the biggest challenges is, as Werner mentioned, our MD and CEO's shopping list, and that's diluted us from a management control and equity perspective. There are a number of other challenges, as I'm sure many other companies are experiencing, but we are working very closely with all the divisions within our business to try and address these. Health and safety, relating to our business, is very key. I mean, internally, it's really quite a minor consideration, considering the nature of our business. But we are now moving into a developmental space. So externally, we are working very closely with a number of experts who address these health and safety considerations. And we are keeping close tabs on what's going on in the various projects. We work very closely with a lot of organizations to try and ensure that we adhere to all the best practices that are available out there that are pertinent to our business, because not everything applies. As a result, we have been recognized for some of our efforts in the various platforms, both locally and internationally, from an environmental, social, and governance perspective. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. The 1,000 jobs, I didn't get it very well, whether is it through the CSI?
No.
Or is it jobs that you created, whether it was in the building innovation? But the question is, are those sustainable jobs, or were those jobs just created temporarily and then you went and passed on? The second point, which I want to welcome, is on the training and development of staff. 6 million rand as a percentage of payroll, what is it, 1%? The 6 million rand?
No, not quite. Sorry, I'll have to get you back to you on the exact percentage on that one.
No, fine. Thanks.
In terms of the jobs created, they are permanent jobs that are, operational within the property sector. So these organizations that we cultivate, it's done so in order for them to become part of our procurement system and our supply chain.
Thanks. Chipo briefly introduced me. I'm from the city of Johannesburg, and I'm the advisor for city sustainability. We are in the business of providing services to all across the city. One thing that always strikes me about property developers or the property sector is the fact that you are able to put up massive infrastructure without public transport facilities. the reality of this country is that taxis are part of our fabric. And the model that we are going for of just putting up massive retail and commercial space without provision of public transport facility, not only taxi facilities, but also ensuring that even outside the buildings themselves, we have enough space for walking, for cycling, etc. Why is it that we are pursuing a model that is really not sustainable in putting up these massive buildings that we are putting into place? I mean, some of the malls that we have in this country are not even accessible by foot. And the reality is, in the room here, we all have cars. But the gentleman who's making us tea over there is coming in a taxi. That's the reality. And he's part of the staff members of the JSE. But the public environment around him is not accommodating of his own needs. And he comes into the environment, and Chipo, I take the point around healthy employees. If I'm going to be frustrated about getting to work, by the time I arrive, I'm so finished that I can't be productive. So I think this is just a challenge that I'm putting to business in the room to say, can we think beyond the model that we are providing for especially outside of our building and for our employees in terms of transportation system? Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe I can just quickly comment on that. It's a very valid point. Unfortunately, a lot of these properties are not situated within public transport domain. However, if you look at our annual report last year, you will see and notice that mainly our new developments are situated next to the Gautrain station due to public transport. And in the Green Building Council requirements, it's clearly stated as one as an independent credit that you need to look at where your building is being built and that it's very close to public transport. And that is not just the Gautrain, that is very close to a taxi rank, etc., etc. So in essence, that's already in our DNA, I can say, with new developments that, it's just part of the makeup of the Green Building Council's certification tool that we need to look at public transport. Unfortunately, with the other properties that's situated farther away from the transport, that's also a difficult thing to address, and we're also constantly looking at initiatives to address that issues.
Hi there. I'm Melanie again from Cohesa Asset Management. I have quite a few questions, if you might bear with me. First of all, congratulations on sexy portfolio of assets as far as the Green Star rated buildings are concerned. If we could wave a magic wand and having all the buildings working on the same sort of levels of innovation, we could cut down our footprint by a good 40% in emissions, which leads me to the question about why there is such poor disclosure on the year-on-year progresses that you're making with those buildings in terms of your environmental footprint. And particularly, especially with the use of renewable resources, like as far as, in your sustainability report and other things that we've looked at on our scorecards, we don't see the disclosure on that, quantitatively speaking.
Yeah. So I think, we're at a stage now where we're going to start to disclose some of our achievements, especially, what we're starting to do is we're analyzing where we're currently developing an application where, if a tenant wants to lease a property with us, he can quickly go on the application, open the application and see how this property is actually performing on electricity and water, on real data. So, and what that will also do is we actually simplify it in a sense where that building will then be benchmarked against the Green Building Council's benchmark standard, and we will tell that specific tenant that, listen, this property will cost you 3 to 10 rand per square meter less than the benchmark building in the same area. Because what you must
do you have data capture platforms in place for that right now? I was just thinking to the Netcare presentation earlier where they had this incredible platform. Are you getting that kind of data?
Yeah, so and that's why utility management is so important, to make sure that you actually install the right metering technology in all your properties so that you can get that data from that specific properties. So, and we're in a very advanced stage in that process as well.
Yeah, please do disclose that. So when it comes to what you were talking to earlier about the green premium, are you once you get that data capture in place and being able to quantify what kind of savings you're making for your tenants, will you start disclosing again, for example, as you're saying, if you cut down on their electricity cost by 10 rand per square meter, therefore that makes you competitive on a 20 rand per square meter basis. Can we start to see that in your results? It really would help us from a valuation perspective.
Okay. No, we can definitely look at it to open the disclosure and make it more transparent.
Yeah. Another question is on recycling initiatives. Are you working with the local municipalities and the buildings or your tenants when it comes to?
Yeah, definitely. So that's also a very strong focus of ours. A big portion of our properties has recycling companies that's managing the recycling, and also again the Green Building Council requirements. If we have an existing building that we certify, a big portion of that waste needs to actually be recycled and not go to landfill. We're also looking at technology like waste to energy plants. Because our portfolio is so big, we can actually almost in a position where we can set up a small waste to energy plant where we can actually accumulate all the waste and then generate electricity from that as well. We already have a plant like that up and running on a pilot basis in Cape Town. So we're definitely actively looking in how we can reduce the waste that goes to landfill in our portfolio.
That's great. Just one final question, and that is, this is a bit of a side. I saw that sort of the Standard Bank, they created their own interior design rating metric. I don't know if you've seen that,
yeah.
Which speaks more to the user's experience of the internal space, or the ergonomics, or like quality and acoustics. Will you guys be looking at in terms of your properties as a sell to your tenants, or also maybe adding that kind of premium to it?
No, definitely. So the word that's going around is activity-based working, and we're actually looking actively in. We actually appointed a lady now that's actually her sole purpose is to actually helping the tenants to make their space more productive. Because in essence, for a green building, productivity is a key focus areas. And if you can just change productivity by even 1%, it makes a huge impact on your bottom line for the specific company.
So if you start making progress in those ratings as well, please disclose.
Yeah. It's difficult in a sense that the tenant also has a set tenant installation that he wants in a specific building. So we actually now in a stage where we're providing consulting to the specific tenant how he can change his specific interiors to increase productivity.
Thank you.
Just a question on my side. How important is BEE in your business?
It's very important. It's considered as one of our primary risks, actually.
Because I've seen your triple BE level has dropped. What would be the reason for that?
No, we improved slightly, but we are aware that with the change of code, there could be some challenges which could make us drop, I think, along with everybody else. But it's one of our key risks, definitely.
Okay, thanks. Because my question was also coming on your reporting on transformation, and you indicated that you have a level 3. And my question was to say, with the revised triple BEE codes of good practice, is Growthpoint still a level 3 or a level 5? Because that score, it might be for a very long time, maybe last year. But like now, I believe if you can do an assessment on your company, you can go to a level 5.
Well, the assessment that was done, the assessment that was done was as at end of March this year, at the level 3. And we will be undertaking another assessment in the next year, I think, and will be hopefully under the new code. And yes, we do anticipate that we'll probably drop at least one level.
Okay, follow up on that. Follow up. It is mainly that you strategized after October last year, and then you conducted your triple BEE assessment just immediately before the 31st of April. That's the only difference. But if now you conduct, you are critically at level 5, as it stands.
It's possible. I haven't reviewed the data, so I'm not going to comment.
Thank you.